Alright, Growing Up in Church video episode 2. This video is going to focus on the negatives about growing up in church and all the stuff that I've learned over my years that I haven't liked or have changed my views about or disagree with. So, let's get into it. I think the first thing you notice about modern church is its high emotion. The songs and preaches are like almost orgasmic with emotion, and the way that people view Jesus is basically romantic. So for example, Hillsong Young and Free, they're a denomination of arguably one of the biggest churches in the world. The opening line on their biggest song, Real Love, is "Staring into your eyes makes my heart come alive." I have absolutely nothing against emotion. I actually think it's good to be emotional sometimes, whatever. But does every single song and preach have to be that emotional? And the thing is, it's clearly evident that a big portion of the emotion in church is forced. For example, in the church mosaic, after every talk that I've seen, the band gets up and starts performing. So you've got this guy screaming and yelling at the end of his talk because it's the climax, and you've got this, the band going on at the end making it super emotional. I'm sure he's passionate to a degree about what he's saying, but he's clearly asked these people to come up and play the band. It's not like they just thought, wow, this is a really emotional moment, I think we should all get up. They've been asked to get up. And I think it's for a specific reason, and that's to enforce emotion. Essentially it's a performance. And my problem with that is not just that it feels kind of synthetic to me and it just doesn't feel real, but there's a bigger issue. I think a lot of churches attach God to emotion. So say someone walks into church, this big emotional performance is going on, they burst out crying because it's emotional. But what churches like to say is that's God speaking to you. And really it's just you reacting to a performance. When you watch, big musicals or whatever, a lot of people do feel emotional. It's not necessarily God, but it's just what people do when they're emotional. The dodgy thing about it is, like I said in my last video, people in the UK between the ages of 18 and 34, 60% of them say they feel loneliness often. No, I do think it's absolutely great that a lot of lonely people or whatever, people going through tough stuff, find a sense of community in church. But I think it's a very dangerous idea if a bunch of lonely young people are getting caught up in communities and tribes who attach themselves to very dogmatic ideologies. So for those who don't know what dogmatic means, dogmatism is the tendency to lay down ideas and principles as undeniably true without consideration of opposing opinions or evidence against it. So not is it bad for anyone to get caught up in dogmatic ideologies, but I think it's bad specifically for young people too. Young people crave identity, and one thing that you can easily find your identity in is an ideological group. And it's great if they want to find identity in a sense of community or a group, but the dogmatism will stop them thinking outside the box. It will stop them growing spiritually, intellectually. In all, it's bad for pretty much anyone. So the bad thing about dogmatism is the fact that it's unable to change. You can't learn from it. And it's been clear that that kind of idea of sticking to one thing, and throwing all facts and evidence and opposing views out the window to it is a bad idea. But for some reason in faith, that still hasn't changed. Some churches like to say and encourage that they challenge and different ways of thinking. It's often just a disguise to make them look more modern. For example, I've been to a bunch of different churches' Bible groups, and before you get into it, they'll say, right, we encourage you to ask questions, but it's not so you can, learn new things and grow in your individual faith. It's so they can tell you the right and wrong answers about what to believe. Some churches will actually have an on-stage panel, but they're not on there to discuss new ideas. They handpick people to enforce one particular idea onto whoever's listening. And that's so weird because the only places where that actually happens is dictatorships like North Korea. The idea that you shouldn't discuss new ideas and you should only think about one idea and you're told wrong if you think anywhere else, it's very cult-like. And I'm not saying all churches that subscribe to that are cults, but they are at risk of falling into cult-like behaviour. I've never actually seen a church democratically run, which is weird if you think about it, because churches aren't just organisations, they're communities. I think the weird thing is a lot of churches like to say, we're a family, we're a community, but it's not run like one. If it's actually a family, how comes there's one person in power who chooses and says what happens with the church, and the church don't actually have a say in what happens with that? unless that person says they do. And then when that person wants to give up, they don't have a vote for who's next. That person chooses the next person to do it. And a lot of the time, the church doesn't have any say in that, whoever the pastor chooses. But the weird thing is, that's exactly how places like North Korea are run. Whoever's in power chooses the next person in power. But obviously, churches are nowhere near as bad as what North Korea is doing. I think if people are going to act and say like their church is a community and a family, then they should run it like one. To be open-minded is a form of wisdom. It's the ability to understand that as strongly as we may feel that our beliefs are true, the fact is they may not be. And it's crazy to me how churches, the place who are supposed to be teaching wisdom, forget this one key point that should be wrapped around places like church. For me, the Christian ideologies that I was brought up by are like a plant pot, and my faith is like a seed. For a while, it helped my faith grow, kept it safe from being destroyed, and just helped me understand my spirituality and faith. But the problem with it is it's a pot, and eventually your seed is going to grow out that pot. And I feel like that's what's happened with my faith in Christianity. My faith has got to a point where it's no longer enclosed by the way modern Christianity is. So, you know, when your faith becomes like that, you have to take it out and plant it in the ground, which is, you know, infinite. And you may be asking, what's the metaphorical ground in that scenario? And I would answer, that's anything. Anything you can explore your faith in, whether that's, you know, experience, relationships, art, travel, you know, whatever. You can find spirituality in any level of life. I think what I've learned is it's not good limiting your faith to a certain book, ideology, or interpretation, as wise as all three of those may be. So if you like this series, let me know in the comments, leave a like, or DM me on Instagram. I'd love to see what you think. But yeah, thank you for watching.